Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Thursday, and we're back with another NBA breakdown for today. I think we have 7 games today to work through. Hope you're able to join. Yesterday had DJ and Eli with me for the first time. Was a really fun show. I think there was a lot of great stuff that came out of it, both on the prop side and the side and total side. For me, it's kind of fun to talk with somebody who looks at things a different way than I do, because sometimes that highlights things that I'm missing or vice versa. And so if you got a chance to check out that show yesterday, hopefully you kind of saw that happening. There were some things on the prop side. I could let Eli talk to it more. Hopefully he's going to join me here in a little bit if he's able to get out of a meeting in time. But some things on the prop side where it looked good and then things just didn't quite break right. On the side and total side, things went pretty well for me yesterday. I've had a couple good days in a row, but full disclosure, I had 2 or 3 days that weren't very good before that. So this week I got into the positive yesterday, hoping to keep that rolling. I've shared this before on Twitter, but if you do want to follow my picks, I post all that stuff on BetStamp. And I do post a pick here and there if I really like it with a write-up or something actually on Twitter. But if you want to follow all of my picks, you can do that on BetStamp. If you haven't seen the link, comment on this post on Twitter or DM me or whatever, and I'd be happy to get that to you. So we're going to jump into these games today. Going to start with a couple. I messaged with Eli earlier today, and there are a couple that he didn't have as much on so far. There are also some lines that aren't out for props yet, so he hadn't dug into those as much. So we're going to actually start with the last 2 games of the day first, and then we will get into the other games after that. So first up, we've got the Warriors at the Mavs. Dallas is -1.5, and the total is 220.5 in this one. This is one where the line flipped. Interestingly, I did bet this game already at Dallas +2.5. I believe that's what it was. I'd have to double check, but pretty sure I got Dallas +2.5. I was kind of surprised to see that line, but I do understand that there are a couple things on either side of this game that can make you want to go different ways. The Warriors have the potential to be a great team. And I've talked about this a lot of times on here before, so I won't belabor it too much, but it's just insane the difference that Draymond Green makes. I think if he can come back and be totally healthy, I still believe that the Warriors are a title contender. But with him out, they just haven't been. The truth is that they've been a relatively mediocre team with him out, and I don't see it's a big enough sample size now that I don't see any reason to think that that's going to turn around before he comes back. They're definitely going to pop off for a game here and there, but in terms of overall trend, I just don't see it happening. So these teams have played a couple times this year already. January 25th, Golden State won 130-92. So that definitely could skew you toward thinking that this is a good matchup for them. And then they did just play February 27th. So just recently, less than a week ago here. 107-101 Dallas in that one, but this is one where Golden State was up by a decent amount and Dallas had to make a pretty significant comeback. And I think the best version of a Golden State team wouldn't allow a comeback like that, but this Golden State team can. And it's just a team that I don't trust as much. But I will say that ended up being a really close game with Dallas, and Golden State did kind of have them in a bad spot. So maybe it's an okay matchup for them in general, but it's just a team that's hard to trust. Dallas has been good lately. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games, and they've continued to play defense really well. This is a team that was on a really amazing streak for a while defensively, and they've continued to be pretty good. Their last 10 games at home, they have only one of them was under 100 points, where they had a streak for a while where they were holding everybody under 100 points. But they have a lot of other games that are under 110, 101, 102, 104, 107, 103. And there's really only one game where they allowed a team to go off. They did allow 132 once in their last 10 games. But I just don't see that being a likely outcome. Of course, in the NBA, it's always a possible outcome. But I think the percentage chance that Golden State goes over 110 or 112 here is less than 50%. I would put it at 30-ish percent. 1 out of 3 times maybe they go over 110. Because Golden State just hasn't been scoring well either is the other thing. In their last 10 away from home, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 games. 40% of the time, they've been under 100 points in their last 10 away from home. And similarly to how Dallas has one game where they allowed a lot, Golden State did go off for 138. I think that might have been against Portland. I'd have to double check that. But they did go off for 138 at one point. But then they have a couple games in the 120s and then a 108 and a 104. So we're talking about 60 plus percent of the time, well, 60% exactly of the time in the last 10 away from home, where Golden State didn't make it to 110. So when I look at this game, I would just say that the most likely outcome to me seems to be to stick with the team that's been hot against the team that hasn't been, even though Golden State has the potential to be the better team of the two if both of these teams are really healthy going into the playoffs or whatever it is. So I did make a bet here on Dallas plus 2.5. I don't hate it at 1.5. I actually almost played Dallas's money line, but figured why not take the couple points in case it's a close game. Obviously you always want to have the points. I mean, you've lost 4 points of value at this time, but I still think that Dallas is the better side to be on in this game between the two. And then in terms of the over under, that feels like a tough one again to me, because like I said in what I led up with here, I don't expect Golden State to go over 110. And if they don't go over 110 and it's a close game, we're landing right around that total. So if I had to pick something on the total, I would go under, but it's not something I'm likely to make a bet on because I don't feel strongly enough about it to do that. All right, next game up, which is actually the last game of the night. And again, if you're just joining, we're hitting a couple of the later games because hopefully Eli is going to be joining me, who was with me yesterday, talk some props and look at some of these other games, but he didn't have as much on these last two games of the night. So I'm just starting there, and hopefully he'll be jumping in here soon. I haven't had a message from him yet or anything, but he's hoping to get out of a meeting in time to talk through some of these games. But we will continue with the ones we've got until he's able to jump on. So Lakers and the Clippers. This is one where we can dive into the numbers, and I'll share a few, but here's what it comes down to for me. The Lakers are an absolute mess right now. They have a roster that doesn't make much of any sense in terms of how the pieces fit together. They're on a terrible streak where it seems like there's not much cohesiveness among them as a team. And while talent maybe can trump team or cohesiveness at times, I actually do think that it matters. You also have an aging LeBron. And don't get me wrong here. People usually, when they say an aging LeBron, what's coming after is like he's lost it, he can't carry a team anymore, blah, 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 blah. I think LeBron's amazing. And he actually has been kind of carrying this team over the last week or so since the All-Star break. I think that in a playoff series, I could see him carrying them to a win potentially. I mean, maybe not with the current, the way things are currently, but just saying he's still a phenomenal player. One of the best in the league, and he absolutely can take over. However, he's getting tired. I mean, he's had to carry this team now for the last week, playing a bunch of minutes, playing his heart out. And even with him doing that, they're not winning. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games straight up. And so even with LeBron playing the hero, they're not able to win games right now. And so I just don't like this Lakers team at all. I actually think that this is a team that you could probably make some money on in the coming week or two just by fading them in most of their games. I mean, yeah, you want to look at the matchup and there might be spots where you don't want to do it. I think we're still at a point right now where you're paying a tax on the Lakers because the Lakers are a publicly popular team. Often the lines, I don't think, reflect what should actually be true. So in this game, against a Clippers team that overall has been playing pretty well, not one of the top teams in the league, but I would say playing like a top half team for sure. I think this line should be 4.5 or 5.5 for the Clippers, and it's 2.5. The Clippers are 6-4 in their last 10, and most of their losses have come against really good teams. They lost to Phoenix, Dallas, Memphis, Milwaukee, Indiana, and Miami going back a little ways. There's a lot of teams that are going to lose to those 6 teams, maybe other than Indiana. That's the one to throw in there that isn't as strong. But the other 5 are really strong teams. While on the other hand, the Lakers lose to everyone. Yes, they have definitely played some good teams lately. Dallas, the Pelicans are playing well. They lost to the Clippers, Milwaukee, but they're also losing to teams that aren't that good. I mean, Charlotte's been bad overall lately. They lost to Charlotte. They lost to Portland. Portland, who's probably the worst team in the league currently. They lost to Atlanta, who's playing better recently, but this is a little ways back, who hasn't been phenomenal. They lost to Golden State, who I just talked about in the last breakdown, that they're not a team you can trust right now, who hasn't been playing well. They've lost against all of those teams. And so for me, this is just a spot where I'm going to pretty much fade the Lakers until further notice. And so if I play against the Lakers in the next 5 games, yeah, they're probably going to cover the spread once, maybe twice. But I just think overall you're going to be positive fading the Lakers until Vegas adjusts the lines or until the Lakers somehow do something with their lineup or come together where they start to put some wins together. Because right now I'm not sure they will. So last game between the Lakers and the Clippers, 105-102. Clippers, the line right now is Clippers -2.5. That just feels like a decent spot to me still. In terms of the over-under on this one, again, I don't have strong thoughts because I think both of these teams are pretty inconsistent. If I had to lean a certain way there, I would probably lean toward the over, but that's not something that I've made a play on, and I don't think I'm likely to. All right, we're going to move on to these other games. And hey, just so you know what we're going to do, if Eli's able to jump on, and we'll continue to see here, we'll see how long his meetings go. Actually, I got a message here. Let me see if it's from him. Yeah, he said he thinks he's wrapping up, so he's hoping maybe 5 more minutes. So what we're going to do is I'm going to keep going and with breaking down these games, but we'll circle back to these other games when Eli's able to jump on, and we'll see what thoughts he has on those to kind of fill out stuff that we've already gone over. So next up, we'll do the Bulls and the Hawks. Atlanta now is -1, and the total is 232.5. This one is kind of crazy. There has been really weird line movement on this one. The only thing I can think is that earlier in the day, Trae Young was a game-time decision, and I think the line was actually Bulls -4. So a 5-point swing, which is pretty substantial. And it's weird because Trae Young was a game-time decision, not like doubtful or anything, and now it does look like he's going to be playing. So that's the only thing that I could attribute this kind of line movement to, but it seems like a lot. These two teams played on February 24th, and Chicago won 112-108. These are two teams that feel pretty similar to me right now. So overall, I think the Bulls probably have a higher ceiling, but the Bulls have been very inconsistent, and especially on defense, they just don't play well a lot of the time. And Atlanta's been playing better, and they've been playing better, especially offensively. So I could see these two playing a relatively close game, which overall would make me want to go for the points. Probably, I mean, at Bulls -4, I was like contemplating what I wanted to do. At Bulls +1, I may wait and see where the line goes, but it definitely makes me lean that way a little bit. Chicago is coming in with 2 days of rest. Might not be the massive advantage you would hope. They're 2-3 against the spread this year on 2 or more days of rest. John Collins is still out here. And then Trae did have that sprained ankle, but looks like he'll be playing. So in terms of how these two teams have been playing, Atlanta's had 120 plus in 5 of their last 8 games. So they've really been scoring well. And some of those were bad defenses, Orlando, San Antonio, and Indiana. But they did put up 120 plus against Toronto and Cleveland as well, which both of those defenses obviously can allow that. But I think that's pretty good scoring. On the other hand, with Chicago, their scoring's just been a little bit inconsistent, and they've scored a lot against bad defenses. They scored a lot against Sacramento, San Antonio, Minnesota, but who doesn't? They did also put up 120 plus against Charlotte and Phoenix, which Charlotte has been okay defensively. Phoenix actually hasn't been great recently here defensively. But then they put up 99 against Miami. Like 99. I know Miami's a decent defense, but 110 against Memphis, 112 against Atlanta, and 106 against Oklahoma City. Just not as solid of scoring as you would want to see, and it feels like not as much momentum as they had before the All-Star break. So, and Chicago's defense has been kind of all over the place, but they consistently give up around 115. So one of the other things I wanted to look at here is there is, I think, a significant difference right now between Atlanta at home and on the road. In their last 10 games, Atlanta's offensive rating at home, 126.3. I mean, just up there, 116 on the road. So 10 points better at home, and they're at home in this game. Their defensive rating, 108.7 on the road, 113 at home. So they are giving up more points. Their rating is about 4+ points worse, defensive rating at home. Or wait, I'm sorry. It's worse on the road. Defensive rating is better at home. And then pace, they've played a little bit faster at home in the last 10. Pace is 100 at home and 97.75 on the road. So Atlanta is a better bet at home than they are on the road. And that's one of the things that might keep me off of Chicago here, even though at the current line, that's the way that I would kind of naturally lean. In terms of the over-under here, I do think that this is a place to maybe pick back up and get on the over. These are two teams that have played a lot of high-scoring games. Atlanta's been at 235 plus for their total in 7 out of their last 10 at home. So they've, and the stats I shared bear that out, right? Higher offensive rating. And then they've played decent on defense. So the two things I like here is maybe Atlanta, but I don't think I'd play it anymore because you had Atlanta +4 earlier in the day. So I don't really want to play them at -1 anymore. But I am interested in the over here. Chicago also has been over 235 in 5 of their last 10. I mean, so you put that together, you're over 50%, I would say. 60% chance, 70%, 65% that it goes over 232.5. I don't think I made a play on that yet, but that's definitely a spot that I'll be looking at. Next game up, we have the Grizzlies at the Celtics, Boston -1. This is another one where the Grizzlies opened up, I believe, -3.5, and now they're +1, and I don't really see any injury news that would move it this direction. Jaylen Brown's going to be out, but we already knew that when the initial line came out, and plus the line has moved toward Boston, so that wouldn't even make any sense anyway. So Memphis is coming in here on 2 days of rest. With 2 or more days of rest, they are 10-2 against the spread, which is the best in the league. And this is a spot that I generally love to get on Memphis. Without Jaylen Brown for the Celtics, that's the big thing we're looking at on the Celtics side. It's basically a wash offensively. They're actually a little bit better offensively when he's out by the numbers. This is one of those things where if you've watched me for a while, I'll talk about a player goes out and you think you know what it means for that team, but it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it does. Jaylen Brown is a good offensive player, so he goes out, you expect them to be worse offensively, and maybe in the long run they are, but I'm just saying based on the numbers from this season, they score 1.2 points less, but their offensive rating is 2.2 less with Jaylen Brown in. Where he does affect them is on the defensive side of the ball. So defensive rating of 105.6 with him in, and then 111.5 with him out. So 6 points worse defensively when he's out of the game. And this is a big deal because Boston relies a ton on their defense, and their defense has been unbelievable. So Boston's a team that I've been on and I love playing, but I think in this spot, the fact that Jaylen Brown is out really hurts them, not because they won't be able to score, but because they may not be as strong defensively as they would be otherwise. In the 3 games since the All-Star break, actually, Memphis' scoring hasn't been as good as I thought it would be, just what I was assuming. They scored 118 against the Spurs, 116 against Chicago, and 114 against Minnesota. All fine. Obviously, John Morant's been going off, putting up a 40-point game, a 50-point game, but their scoring's been decent. And so it just makes me wonder against a better defensive team like Boston. But again, this is where I think it helps that Jaylen Brown is out. I will say over the last 10 to 15 games, both of these teams have had pretty easy schedules. And that's something to watch in the long run, not necessarily just for this matchup, because I do think both of these teams are really good and they're beating teams they should beat, but they also aren't coming up against a ton of competition lately. If you look at when they've played teams that are at least decent over the last 15 plus games, Boston's gone 6-1. Oh, here comes Eli. Let me finish this up and then I'll get him in here. Boston's gone 6-1 against those better teams, but 3 of those were Atlanta, who's so. Memphis 3-1. So, both teams maybe struggle slightly against good teams, but this is a spot where, especially at the current line, I like Memphis and I would lean toward the over, though I probably won't have something on that. And with that, let's welcome in Eli.
I made it.
Yes, sir. Way to wrap up that meeting, man.
Right.
Appreciate you doing it.
You can't bet against John Morant, can you?
No, you cannot. So, well, hey, man. So I went through those 2 late games first, and then I've just covered 2 other games. So I want to go back and get your take on those 2 before we move on to the others. So the first one is the Bulls and the Hawks.
Yeah.
I got the lineup there on the screen. What were your thoughts on this game?
So this is a game that's interesting. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on why you think the Hawks are slightly favored here at the 1 point. I'm seeing Hawks +1 on FanDuel right now. Actually,
okay.
It seems to me like the Hawks without John Collins kind of have to play a different just a little bit different brand of basketball. Clint Capella is a great rebounder, obviously one of the best rebounders in the NBA, but it seems like he's not a guy you're throwing the ball to on the block when you really need a bucket. So I personally, I think I would lean Bulls money line, maybe the Bulls one to cover the one. It's not a big difference in odds there. That's a team that kind of seems to go as DeMar DeRozan goes, and DeMar is averaging 30.7 points against the Hawks this year. He's dropped 35 and 37, plus another 20-point game. So if he's hitting shots, I think the Bulls win that game outright. But that's just a gut feel. I know you got more of the data there.
No, it's fine. So, I mean, just for you, basically what I said is I think the biggest thing to me here is that Atlanta has played significantly better at home recently. And so I think this is a better – and Chicago's just up and down. You know, they're a team where their numbers don't quite bear out how good I think they are all the time. Right. I expect it to be a little better. But I lean towards Chicago when I first saw this line, and I don't think I would play Atlanta. The home stuff just makes me think about staying off of this game completely. Actually, the over here was I haven't bet it, but that was the thing I'd consider more.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention too, is maybe the over looks interesting. It's a big number though, right? 232.
232 and a half. Yeah.
But
so do you think you might be on some DeRozan?
Yeah.
Or what do you think?
Oh, I don't know about DeRozan. Not a great matchup, and he's expensive. And like I tend to try to stay away from the biggest star players. Not as a rule by any means, but it usually seems like DeRozan's line is probably going to be, I think it's like 30 and a half. And like big numbers like that just scare me. Let's see. It's 20. It's actually come down a little bit. It's 28 and a half now, which he should hit easily, right? But that's just a really big number. In the NBA, so much can, there's so much that can happen to keep him from getting 20 and a half, right? So I tend to stay away there. A couple things I'm looking at in this game. Zach LaVine has been burning some people on his straight point lines. I think they've been a little high recently. They've been like the 23 and a half, 24 and a half range, 22 and a half. He's at 23 and a half right now for even money. He's got a pretty good matchup tonight against the Hawks, and I'm looking for something here for both. I'm just going to try to fly through things because I was a little late here, but so the shooting guards against Hawks since last 60 days, since January 3rd, averaging plus 3.3 points to average and plus 0.6 rebounds to average. So that's the fourth ranked points matchup and the sixth ranked rebounding matchup. So I think his line at 23 and a half is too high, but I might very well end up being on something like Zach LaVine 20 plus points and 4 plus rebounds, which you can get for minus 114 right now. I think that's really good value. Like I said, he has been burning a lot of people taking his points or his threes. Like it's a really good matchup for him for threes. Hawks giving up plus 0.8 threes to average, but he's just been too expensive and burning people while my followers have been winning some money on him, taking lines like 20 plus and 4 rebounds. So that's one play I'm very interested. I'm close to pulling the trigger on. I want to wait and see what Clint Capella's lines are like, because he has a really good points matchup. I'm trying to pull that up here too. Not really good, but it's not bad. So if we look at last 90 days back to December 3rd, which is a little bit bigger of a time frame, centers are averaging plus 1.5 points, which is the 5th ranked, and plus 0.8, which is a top 10 rebounds. And last time they played, he went crazy. I forget what the exact line was. Last time they played on the February 24th, he scored 14 and 17 rebounds. So I think that line might be expensive when it's out. His point line realistically should be 7.5 or 8.5, and I think I might be on it there. I feel like it's probably going to open at like 9.5 or 10.5 for plus money, and at that point, I might look at like a double or a 10, a 10 point and 12 rebound SGP if it's kind of a lean play if it's plus 150, plus 160 somewhere in there. So those are two
Yeah,
things I'm looking at for this game.
that makes sense because it's just looking at the game log. Like you highlighted how it's a good matchup, but he's not in double digits a lot with points. It's every 5 games or so, maybe, or 6 games. So,
but because of that last matchup, I feel like it might open up at 9.5, and I would stay away from that point line just because of what you just said. But
yeah,
if we can get a big value double lean for like half a U or a quarter unit, something like that, that might be a play.
Worth a shot, yeah. All right, well, let's go to the Grizzlies and the Celtics. That's what I was just wrapping up when you came on, and to wrap it, because Jalen Green, what I said is because Jalen Green is out, it actually affects the Celtics on defense more than on offense, according to the numbers. And so I am interested in the Grizzlies here. I think without Brown, it's a decent matchup for them, actually.
Yeah.
And then maybe the over, though I don't feel convicted about that.
Yeah, I don't. I'm kind of looking at Robert Williams' rebounds a little bit. It's an above average matchup. It's not great, so I'll be interested to see what his line is and if there's value there. Like I've said when I first jumped on here, I don't know how you can bet against John Morant right now. What he's doing, he can completely take over a game, and it doesn't seem like there's anybody in the NBA that can stop him from doing what he wants to do. Obviously, there's a lot of talent on that Boston team. They have been playing really good defense, I think, but Brown being out hurts them. I do think Derek White could surprise some people. Actually, something I forgot about. If when we get lines on Derek White, I'm gonna look at his assists line. It's a good matchup for him there. But as of right now, I doubt I'll end up taking anything on this game. But I will be watching it just because John Morant's electrifying. So.
Yeah, man, that's a good call with White. I think it helps them to have him now with Brown out. I will just say, like, when we talk about the Celtics defense, I really do believe they're a good defense still. But I do want to highlight that before the All-Star break, they had a defensive rating under 100 in 7 straight games. And since we've come back, it's been 117, 103, 109, 130, and 105. Wow. So it's not like it's been bad, but it definitely hasn't been locked down good like it was before. So this is, again, where I think it's possible that like this total could still be depressed a little bit because of how good they have been. But again, I like Memphis more than the total. So
yeah.
I would agree. All right. Let's do the Heat and the Nets. Miami -2.5, 221.5 total. Miami's on a back-to-back, and Kevin Durant will be back. What do you think?
I would want to see how Nets are +2.5, right? Yeah. I would want to see how Durant looks. I'm guessing he's going to be on some sort of minutes restriction, though I haven't heard that. I think earlier this morning, I think the Nets were actually favored, so I think that's flipped. Is that right?
Oh, I didn't ever see it, but I can actually check what the line movement is.
I feel like, because I looked at it earlier, I was like, wow, that looks like, they might be overcompensating for KD coming back, who usually it seems like his first game back, he lets a lot of people down because he's going to play 20 minutes or something like that, right? So I feel like I haven't heard that, but
I just in one place it was a pick 'em. Other places opened it at 3, from what I'm seeing anyway.
Okay,
but
I could be wrong. Maybe it just being a pick 'em surprised me, because I think on FanDuel it's moved at least a little bit. So I don't know that the Heat are another one of those teams, man, where you look at and they should be good. I think we talked about them a little bit yesterday, right?
Yep.
I think I'm staying away from this game in general, except for maybe Gabe Vincent. But it's really tough for me to get a read on outcome or total or anything like that until we know what KD is going to be, how much he's going to be playing and what he's going to actually look like.
Yep, I pretty much totally agree. I think I might have a couple notes on this, but really these are the kind of games with someone as important as Kevin Durant where I just am not going to do much with it, like you said, until we see what it looks like. So, yeah, in fact, my note is Durant is back. That makes this really hard to cap. So, especially like you said, minutes restrictions, who knows? Too many unknowns. So I'll stay away from this one.
And the only thing I am looking at, I'll be very interested in what Gabe Vincent's line is. He has shown the ability to score the basketball. And this is probably gonna change with KD being back. Last 90 days though, Brooklyn allowing plus 3.2 points to average to point guards, which is the second ranked. Also plus 0.6 rebounds to average, which is the second ranked as well. So I have no idea what his lines are going to open at. He put up some numbers last night. I think he got over 20, right? So that could be a very interesting straight line if it's in like the 14, 15 and a half range. I have no idea. Could also be an interesting kind of lean for a 20 or 25 plus kind of type value play for a smaller unit.
Yep. Yeah, and you're right. He put up 21 last night. He had 20 the game before against Chicago. So and both of those are Lowry out, right? So that's where he's going to get
exactly.
Yeah. So good. That's definitely something to watch against a Brooklyn defense that hasn't been unbelievable. So
right. I don't. Do you have any kind of sense of how KD changes that defensively for them? Because I really have no clue.
I think it's hard because the pieces are different now. So like Drummond still, like Drummond is a pretty decent interior piece. I think, like, not as a lead guy, but as a secondary guy, I actually like him pretty well. And so I think it feels to me the same as on offense, where we have to see how the pieces fit together defensively too, because it's just a different team.
So, and when Simmons is in there, I think for sure that helps them, right? But I have no idea how KD affects
that length and athleticism.
Right. Yep. And yeah. We'll just have to see.
All right. Well, we'll watch Gabe Vincent, and other than that, maybe take a pass on that one.
Yeah.
Next one up is Pistons at the Raptors. Toronto's -8 and 218 total here.
Yeah, this seems, just gut feeling, this seems like too many points to me. Raptors have seemed really hit or miss, up and down type team. Van Vliet, OG, both game time decisions tonight, and sorry, my dog just dropped a bone.
You're good. As long as everyone's okay, we're good.
Freaking Winston. I've talked about this a little bit on my Twitter. It really seems like OG is kind of their glue guy, and I'm a Hoosiers fan as well. So I've watched a whole lot of OG, but it seems like that's just that he brings so much to that team that doesn't show up in box scores with his defense, and just everything else he's doing. Cuts harder and sets better screens really than I think a lot of people. So they just have to play a different style of basketball without OG, and Van Vliet obviously is next level, outstanding point guard. So if they don't have even one of those guys, I definitely feel like 8 points is too much against a Detroit team that has Jeremy Grant back, and it seems like he's actually back now. Like he's been back for a few games, obviously, a few weeks I think. But just in the last couple, has started to look like himself again. Let me see. Looking at his last 10 games, he shot 27% against Minnesota on February 6th, 31% on the 8th. Had a couple of decent shooting nights against Memphis and Charlotte, but then 40% against Washington. And then he had a couple of the 24th, he shot 27% from the field versus Cleveland, and 20%. Last two games, he's seems like he's kind of found his shot a lot more. So he shot 58% at Charlotte, 53% at Washington, scored 26 points in both of those games. It also seems like Cade Cunningham is kind of developing into, a guy kind of right in front of our eyes. So obviously the Pistons are not a good basketball team right now, but going up against also like Sadiq Bey as kind of doing what they need him to do, right? He's not an all-star by any means, but going up against a Toronto team that is very up and down and might not have two super important guys tonight. I think 8 points is too much. Also, when I looked earlier, Jeremy Grant 20 plus and Detroit to win was like plus 600 or something. As a player performance double might be worth a sprinkle, but I'd hear your thoughts.
I like that one. I'm going to write that down to keep an eye on. So this game, this feels like another spot that just feels volatile to me, because I think my general overall sense is Detroit has been trending positively, and Toronto is like
exactly
a stock that's just moving up and down like crazy, and it's really hard to get a handle on. So I do think what you said about OG and Van Vliet if they play or not, both game time decisions absolutely makes a big difference. I think you broke that down really well in terms of what they bring to Toronto. A few things on this game that, and it doesn't give me like a super strong position, but the things that I looked at here, Toronto's on the front end of their third consecutive back-to-back, which is a really weird schedule thing. Yeah. And it's their 5th game in 7 days because of that. Keep an eye on this for tomorrow. It will be their 6th game in 8 days. And they play a tight rotation. So I don't know how they don't get a little tired by tomorrow at least. And
you could definitely see them waiting to bring Fred or OG back, even if they're ready tonight, just so you have fresh legs tomorrow.
Right. Or maybe they bring one of them back, and let the other one rest or something. So Detroit on the other side, though, it is their 4th game in 6 days and the front end of a back-to-back for them. So they also have been playing a lot of basketball here. The thing for me is, like, since the All-Star break, Toronto, they were on a good run before, but I think they're a pretty good team. But again, it hasn't been pretty for them in the last 4 games. They scored 93 against Charlotte and 100 against Atlanta and got beat by 25 plus in both of those games. Then they blew Brooklyn out 133-97, but then they came back and beat Brooklyn by 109 to 108. And if you look at their defensive rating in those games, like, they had in the last 10 games, they had 2 games where their defensive rating was under 100, but they also have like 5 games where it's 119 plus. So they're playing more bad defense than they're playing good defense. I looked at the back-to-back thing. Detroit's 2-9 straight up on the front end of back-to-back, which they're not a good team, so that's not surprising. They've lost most of those by 9 or more, but I think your points about how their team is maybe changing some with Grant coming into form and Cunningham improving makes me not care as much about that. Toronto's 8-4-1 on the front end of back-to-backs in regulation. I tend to look at scores in regulation because overtime is just like it was a close game. So, so I actually I lean toward Detroit here. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but I definitely kind of like that. The other thing that I potentially like here is, again, with the over. In the last 15, Detroit's had the worst defensive rating of any time frame on 1 day of rest, 118.6. So I could see this as a spot where they give up some points. But like I just shared with you, Toronto hasn't played great defense lately. And 218 is not a really high total. So, yeah, especially if OG doesn't play again, I think I like the over here, and I definitely lean toward Detroit.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those 100%. A couple of things prop wise I'm looking at here. Saddiq Bey rebounds as well as potentially like a 15 plus points on him. So his line's at 16.5 right now. He's averaging right at 16 on the season, 17.6 in his last 10, 16.6 in his last 5, and then 15.5 against Toronto. I think that's 2 games for 15 and 16 points against the Raptors. And rebounds wise, he's at 5.5 rebounds right now, and I could easily see that line being 6.5 for plus money. Even though he's averaging 5.8 on the season, but 6.3 in his last 10 and 7.2 last 5, and 6 against Toronto. So I think there's a lot of value in doing something like a Saddiq Bey 15 plus and maybe like a 4 rebounds, something like that. I might end up taking his over 5.5 rebounds straight. I'm also looking at Jeremy Grant with the points line of 18.5, just because what I was talking about a few minutes ago, seems like he's really coming into form and is all the way back. Where is it? He's taking more shots. Last 2 games, he took 19 and 17 shots, scored 26 in both of those. So if his volume stays up there, I don't think there's really much of a chance of him being under 18.5 unless he goes, one of those 20% shooting days. But
yeah.
So there could also be value in like a Saddiq Bey and Jeremy Grant both to score 15. It's probably in the minus 120 range. Something like that. I typically don't like to have more than 1, maybe 2 plays on a game. So I'm trying to narrow it down and figure out which thing or which combination things I want to go with. Those are the 3 things I'm looking at: Jeremy Grant points, Saddiq Bey points, Saddiq Bey rebounds.
Man, I like it. It's funny. I like to pull up, stats and look while you're talking about these guys because you have more info than I do. But just interesting looking at Saddiq Bey's lines. really good overall, right? But his
Yeah.
games that are bad are really,
Awful.
really bad.
Awful.
Like
Yeah.
against Cleveland, he shot 14.3% from the field and from three. And then
Yeah.
had another one where he shot 9.1% from the field and 14. So, I mean, it's like not often, but those
Right.
bad games are pretty terrible. So,
and
all
that's
right.
why real quick, it's also at times in situations like that, it's sometimes, worth, instead of taking a straight 16 and a half, maybe you take the 20 plus for, plus 120, 130, whatever that is. Right.
Right.
Because it does seem like on his good nights, he is usually close or above 20 points.
It does look that way for sure. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And what did you say his rebound line was?
5.5.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I said it should be 6.5, and that's wrong. It should be 5.5, but I like it a lot at 5.5.
Yeah, for sure. He's over that a lot. So, okay. Well, let's get to the last game here. Kings at the Spurs. Am I right that the Kings are on a back-to-back here?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep,
back-to-back. They're 6-6 against the spread on back-to-backs for the season, 4-8 to the over. So not too much to take away from that. The one thing in terms of the rest is the Spurs are on 2 days of rest, and they are 8-2 to the over this year when they have 2 or more days of rest. So what do you think about this game?
I'll probably end up staying away. Just kind of outcome wise. I guess I would probably lean Spurs just because Kings have been, I really think, underperforming. And I don't think, I don't like their offensive scheme with the addition of Sabonis. Like if you're gonna go the route and try to do what the Pacers were trying to do, like I feel like you need to design your offensive scheme around that. And it tends to be a lot of De'Aaron Fox ending up taking a late shot clock wild shot or something like that, right? So I would lean Spurs, but 7 is a lot of points. And the over is 241, which I think is way too high to feel good about taking. But so I don't know. I'll get your thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, no, and this is a game where I don't have as much for some of the reasons that you said. These are teams that are a little harder to cap. I actually like the Spurs okay. I think the way that they've constructed their lineup works for DeJounte Murray, and he's a phenomenal player. So, that's against a bad team in the Kings, not a good defense. I think DeJounte Murray could have a good game, but the Spurs are just too up and down for me, and 6.5 is a lot of points. So this isn't a spot that I'd be interested in betting. And in terms of the over-under, this is like, I've said this before, so I like UFC, and people will say there are spots that are like dog or pass,
Mm-hmm.
And this to me feels like over or pass, where I don't want to bet the under on the Kings and the Spurs, but 241 so high, I'm not taking the over on that either.
And
so
the same with the spread too, right?
Yeah, so this is just a total stay away for me from where it's lined. So
yep. A couple of props I'm really looking at. My potentially my favorite play of the night, depending on where the line opens up at. I don't think it's out yet. I really like Harrison Barnes tonight. I don't have his averages or anything like that in front of me, but it seems like Harrison Barnes is a guy that when he has a good matchup and kind of gets in the flow of things, he's really going. He can have really off nights as well, but really, really good matchup for him tonight. Kings since 1-3, allowing plus 3.1 points to small forwards, which is the second ranked. So again, no idea what the line opens up at. It's probably like 16.5, I would say.
16.5 at -106 on FanDuel right now.
Is it up? Okay.
Yep.
Might be able to dig into that a little bit more. That very well might end up being on my card.
Man,
really
that's
like
solid.
betting on Harrison.
He's been over that.
Barnes.
Like I pulled up the game log, and he's been over that. I mean, just looking at it, maybe 75% of the time here recently. So
so the concern is he's only averaging 11.5 against the Spurs. So he's got 9 and 14 in 2 games against the Spurs. But yeah, the line is 16.5. I got it up now. He's averaging 17.2 on the season, 19.9 in last 10, and 19.4 in the last 5. So typically, like those are the 4 averages I look at, full season, last 10, last 5, and versus the matchup. So he's above that in 3 of 4 of those, plus the good matchup. I will most likely be on Harrison Barnes over 16.5 points, probably for like a unit and a half. Might also be on like a 20 plus, 25 plus for a smaller lean. Because I do think, kind of like what we were talking about, I do think this game is going to be somewhat competitive, at least for 3 quarters. So yeah, I like Harrison Barnes a lot. A couple other things I was looking at. Dejounte has a Dejounte. I suck with names. I was kind of looking at his 20.8 assist combination. I again try to stay away from assists a little bit. I'm trying to see if I have anything else. De'Aaron Fox points maybe, but that's probably going to be too juiced. But I think on this game, Harrison Barnes will be the play for me.
It's great, man. So this is just some stuff to back up what you're saying, because we've established like your stuff is more player specific when you're looking at the props. But the Spurs are a team that gives up a lot of points and plays pretty fast. And so you talked about how that creates more opportunity. So if you go back and look at their game log, I mean, they have a couple games under 110, but for the most part, they're giving up 110 plus. And their defensive rating, again, if you go look back, is over 115 most of the time. And then they play relatively quick. So just a good game environment for points.
Yeah, and especially for a guy like Harrison Barnes, who I think in one of those faster paced games like that definitely becomes the number 2 offensive option behind De'Aaron Fox. Because Domantas Sabonis is a very good center, but he doesn't really get up and down the floor in a hurry like that. So when the game is fast, he can definitely disappear at times. So I think Harrison Barnes gets a lot of shots up tonight, and he can definitely hit them. So.
One more thing I'm going to just throw in real quick here that is something I watched for and I hadn't noticed till now. This is the Spurs' first game back home after an 8-game road trip. And anytime a team comes home after a really long road trip like that, I do kind of look to fade them a little bit. It just coming home to their families and their own bed and all that kind of stuff. It's not enough for me to make a play on it probably, but I did just notice that they're coming off that long road trip. So maybe more to say can stay competitive too. So
right. And more to say, 6.5 is definitely too much.
Yeah, I think so too, for sure. So, hey man, so I got a couple minutes till I get out of here, but remind people where they can find all your stuff because they need it for today.
I'm at DGN Eli on Twitter, so DEGNELI. All the stats I've been running through are on dganalytics.com, so DEGENELYTICS.com. And just feel free to reach out if you have any questions on what the data means, what you're looking at, or just kind of gambling in general. Like I was saying yesterday, learned a lot the hard way, and just trying to help people not have to do that, just like you are. So appreciate having me on.
Help people learn those lessons, not the hard way, right? So awesome, man. Hey, thanks for making the time to jump on.
Yeah,
this
man.
Was fun, and hopefully we'll all go and have a good evening, make some money, and be back at it again tomorrow. So
right on, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, guys.